my very best to get this job that I so crave.
Fanzone debate. We're here for the last match of round number 1. It's been a long journey, but we're here. We're getting into round number 2, but first we have one more match to shoot, and it is as far as the matches go, the most even records as we can get. We got the number 8 seed going up against the number 9 seed. Brandon Cohen, the 8 seed, going up against the 9 seed, Kaleb Koho. We saw Koho earlier this year. He lost in the contender match to Mr. Cody Newberry, who went on to play for the title. So there's that. And then Brandon, also last match, a number 1 contender match, lost against Bill, who went on to play for the title. So these guys have a lot in common when it comes to debate. This is going to be a fun one. I'm looking forward to this. We got Brian on the desk. Brian, how are you doing, my friend?
I am doing great. I honestly don't remember either of these people's previous debates, even though I was there. So it'll be nice and fresh for me to watch them debate.
Absolutely. And Cody, current champion of this league, you are here to judge this one. Thank you for stepping in last minute. How are you doing, my friend?
I mean, I have to kind of thank Koho for gifting me the shot to go play Kirk to win the belt. That was nice. I can't wait for him to scream a question that he's very passionate about, because that's what he does. But overall, I'm excited to judge the debate. It's getting closer. The tournament's winding down to the round 2 now, so we'll see how these two go. Brandon did really good when he started. Had a fortunate against Bill, but I think he can beat Koho if everything goes right. So, yeah, should be fun.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to bring in the players now. We're going to start with the lower seeded player, Mr. Koho. Koho, lower seeded, but literally it's one spot. You are in the number 9 seed on the back half of the bracket. Do you feel like the underdog today? Do you feel like you have what it takes to beat Brandon? Or are you just here to fuck around and say, "Nah"?
I mean, I really have no idea what to expect from Brandon, if I'm being honest. I feel like I could either be in for an ambush, or I could be in for a great game, or I don't know what's going to happen. So I just kind of focused on my answers and my prep and what I can do as a debater, and pushed what his strategy might be out of my mind, and just focus on what my approach is going to be. And hopefully that works this time. Brian, you were at my last debate, and you were the only person on my side for most of that fight. So I do appreciate you, even though if you don't remember.
I do remember that. I felt bad about that one afterwards. So we will bring in the higher ranked player today, Brandon. Brandon, welcome to the match. You're the number 8 seed. Do you feel prepared for today's match? Are you okay? Are you looking to get back to the number 1 contender shot? How are you feeling about the match?
I'm feeling all right. My brain's a little mushy end of the day, but I'm feeling pretty good. I'm already more prepared than last match. I actually watched some of the movies I was supposed to watch, unlike last match, so that's pretty good. I'm a little worried Cody's here because I have to say some bad things about some Boston people in some of these questions, but hopefully he can look past that and forgive me. But I am here just to fuck around and see what happens. So
he likes the teams. He doesn't live there. It's okay. So we're gonna get into the match. This is how it's gonna work. The players drafted categories. I gave them questions based on the categories, and then they gave me the answers back. They're gonna draft, or they are going to debate those questions tonight before our very souls. They're going to get a 1-minute opening, followed by a 5-minute freeform, followed by a 1-minute closing. At the end of the debate, Cody, Brian, and I will write on our boards who we think won the question and the debate. 2 out of 3 votes wins you a point, and the first 1 to 3 points wins the match. Gentlemen, any questions as we get into the debate?
Nope.
All right, then let's do this thing. There's so much more of that fight that happens, and every time I watch Ted, I'm like, oh shit, that's right. There's like a whole more of the scene. Let's get into it, starting with the first question. This was drafted by Brandon in the category of sports. The question is, best character in a hockey movie, non-fandom, but I don't think there's any fandom hockey movies anymore, so that's... Yeah, I don't think there are. So, Brandon, you're going to get to kick this one off. You have 1 minute to open your argument when you start talking.
So, the Enforcer, one of the most iconic positions in all of sports. In case you don't know, it's the guy who just supposed to be on the ice and just his only job is to fight. He's just there to protect his teammates and just instill fear into the other team. It's kind of a dying breed now. You don't see it much anymore, but you think of these, it kind of become a stereotype of hockey players, just these meatheads, as these one-dimensional people missing teeth who just want to fight and drink beer at the end of the day. And then comes along Goon, and Doug Glatt's character in Dune, played by Sean William Scott, is one of the most dynamic characters in sports movies and in hockey movies specifically. He's playing the stereotypical character of this guy who can just fight. But then as you see throughout the movie and the second one, he's way more than that. He's a likable person. He has a big heart along with a big punch. And he just wants to, he's misunderstood and wants to just...
All right, we'll bring in Koho. Koho, you have 1 minute to open your argument when you start talking.
So I think the best character in all of hockey films is Herb Brooks, the coach played by Kurt Russell in the movie Miracle. I think when I look at hockey films, I look for the person that I can look to and relate to the most. I think Herb Brooks is that voice. He's that voice of reason. He looks beyond what hockey players should be, what hockey teams should look like, and how hockey should be played to put together the right team, not necessarily the quote-unquote best team. And he inspires them to do the impossible. He believes in his people. He works them out in the right way. He puts them through so much practice and work, and changes the way that they do prep for these hockey games, the way they approach it, so they could beat the Soviet Union in a game that they had no business even being in. And he comes into this, Kurt Russell does, as Herb Brooks, and just instills hope and just this belief from the jump that I think is just infectious from any character in movie, period. He's just one of those great all-time sports figures. I think he's incredible.
Time. All right, Herb versus Goon, 5-minute free form. When one of you starts talking, please don't talk over each other, or I will come hit you with a stick. I will throw up the 1 minute warning when that time comes. If one of you is talking too long before I hit you with the stick, I will throw up the let's move on. So again, best character in a hockey movie, 5 minutes when one of you starts talking.
I cede the floor to you.
Thank you. So I love Miracle. I think it's an amazing movie, but I really think the problem with Herb Brooks for me is that he was a real person, and Kurt Russell's performance, it's like when I think of Miracle, I think of the moment of the actual Miracle on Ice, but also the speech. He has a speech, he wins the game at the end, and he kind of just gets lumped in with, like, he's a good sports movie coach. And there's other people who did kind of the same things he did, like Denzel Washington, remember the Titans, Gene Hackman and Hoosiers. Even kind of the coach in Major League, I think, is more memorable to me than actual Herb Brooks. He just has that one big speech, and then he, thankfully has that big moment to rely on. Then you root for him because of that real life moment.
So you just kind of made my entire point for me by pointing out that he's the definitive hockey movie coach. Like when you look at hockey movies, which is what we're arguing is the best hockey movie characters, there's no other coaches in any hockey movie that can hold a candle to him. And when you look at all other hockey movie characters, the people you're throwing him as comps to are some of the best characters in their respective sports versions of films as well. So when I think, yeah, he has the big inspirational speech, which is just a defining moment. I think that is the complete emphasis for why he's a great character and why it's worth watching and investing in his journey, is because that moment underpins entirely his morals, his characteristics as being this champion of his players and of his people and of his sport. Where when it comes to Goon, you were like, oh, he plays the stereotypical guy with a big heart. The thing is, that is all in and of itself a character stereotype that I've seen before in this genre. That happens a lot. That happens in Miracle. So like there are other people who do that role, and I think he's just doing that again. They just made a movie centered around him instead of making him a supporting player. And there's nothing special about the character of Black. Like I just don't think he's that special. Whereas Herb Brooks is the definitive rise above in his movie and all hockey movies.
Well, I just think that like the fact that he gets his own movie, gets 2 movies, in fact, shows that he is much more than these other stereotypical enforcers in the movie. They try to make enforcers likable in movies, but usually it's just the big punch. But they're able to make 3 hours, 4 hours of movies around this one character because he has all these sides to him, right? He's punching them and really saying, like, he does things that you don't see before. He's punching people in the face and apologizing for it. Like, he doesn't like what he's doing. He's just good at it. And he really, has that internal struggle of like, do I keep doing this because I'm good at it? Or do I, do something else? And he tries to, actually play the game of hockey and gets in trouble for it. So he wants to break out of this stereotype. He doesn't want to be like the other stereotypes and everything else. And, just mentioning the other coaches, I just feel like, there are other good hockey movie coaches, but it's just like, for me, he just doesn't do anything. He just gets lumped in he just gets lumped in with good performances, but as a coach, but just doesn't stand. For me, that movie, just the moment itself is what stands out to me. But with Goon and Sean William Scott's performance, he anchors that movie in both of those movies. And that's the reason why you want to keep watching. That's the reason why they made multiple ones.
So if we were arguing what the best hockey movie is, I mean, like if the argument is about hockey movies and the moment is what you want to take away over the performance, like I'm kind of confused about what your hits are on Herb Brooks, where it comes down to we're just arguing who the best character is, and your biggest knock on him is that he's good, he's a good coach. Because
he got the speech and that's it.
Okay, but the speech is just the big moment. The rest of the movie around him, when he makes his first pitch to the Olympics committee about why he should be the right coach, and they're hesitant, but he convinces them. And then the moment where they play Norway and they're convinced up with the girls in the crowd and they're not focusing on the game, and he talks to them and he makes them do their workouts and is able to refocus them on the sport. I think there's a lot of teachable moments with Herb Brooks that shows why he's a great coach and a great character to follow through the eyes of this really dramatic tournament. Throughout. Whereas again with Goon, you're like, he has a big heart and he's likable, but at the end of the day, I don't know if I see that. I don't really see that in Goon. I feel like he has the one moment at the beginning with his brother, and then the rest of the movie is just the one joke over and over. It's just the one joke of I'm going to hit you and say I'm sorry, and there's no progression from that. Even in movie 2, it feels like a retread of movie 1.
Well, the progression is he actually tries to, become a better skater, improve himself beyond just this one skill that he has. He's trying to make himself a better person. He's trying to actually not improve it just his team. He's trying to improve his actual internal character as well. So it's not the same joke over and over again. They want it to be the joke over and over again, but then his character is trying to just break out of that and become more than just the punch. And he gets kind of batted down for it, but then at the end, he wins for his team. And then, he has, these punches, but he's trying to break through that. And I think that's just what makes him so good is that is that stereotype. He's just trying to push that away.
Time. All right. Koho, we're going to start with you. You have 1 minute to close your argument when you start talking.
So I think what we established is I think Brandon is correct in exactly one element. Herb Brooks stands above the rest of the coaches in his sport as being the best in those movies. And that's because he's such a good character. The speech is the thing people take away because it's the defining moment of him. But the rest of his moments throughout the movie where he is teachable to his coach, to his players, and he picks the people that are right for his team and not necessarily were the best scorers in the league. And I think that's what makes him such an interesting dynamic character. He's the definitive coach for hockey movies, just like Brandon said. Whereas he keeps bringing up that he is against type of being a goon, but at the end of the day, even though the movie wants you to believe, oh, I got a big heart and whatever, he only has one scene that shows that, and then he just keeps doing the one joke of, oh, I'm sorry, and hits people. Sure, he tries to learn to be a better skater, but it's still the same thing that this character does for 2 straight movies. He's still the same person. He never really grows or progresses or changes outside of he learns to skate a little bit better. He's still the same person in the first scene that he is in the end of the second movie. And whereas Herb Brooks throughout this movie is such an inspirational force that we can look to, he gets the impossible done with his hockey team, and he's the definitive hockey movie character.
Time. All right, we're going to bring in Brandon, who has 1 minute to close his argument when he starts talking.
So my point with Herb Brooks is that he just gets lumped in with other sports coaches. And with Doug Glatt, he is just there's a stereotype in hockey, and Doug Glatt is constantly trying to break out of that stereotype. And he does grow. The character does definitely grow. He comes in not knowing how to skate, can only punch, and throughout the first movie, you see him grow as a person, grow on the ice. He is trying to win. He doesn't want to win the game with his punches. He wants to win the game with his actual on ice skills. And that's what makes him so relatable to me and one of the best hockey, or the best hockey character in a movie, because he is trying to, break out of that hockey role. He's trying to break out of that goon role, that enforcer role. And he does, and Sean William Scott's performance does an amazing job of, like, he is lovable, he is likable, he's hateable at some times, but you can see he wants to be a better person. He wants to grow, and he wants to do what he's not supposed to do, and he wants to overcome.
Time. All right. Bring in the judges. All right. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I don't know where my marker is. We're back. I lost my marker. Brand new marker for this. I went with Kaleb. I think that both presented really good ideas and points about their characters and why they were strong characters in their movies. But I thought that on the whole, Koho was able to do enough to kind of take down the goon character for me. And I thought that Brandon kind of had the one trick of, like, Cody disagrees with me so hard, clearly, of the vote, or of the vote. Now I'm thinking just Cody voting against me.
No, I'll tell you what it is. It's not about you at all.
Of the speech thing. I went with Cody. I thought that it was close. It honestly was close. And I know we say that a lot, but it was kind of like a back and forth the whole time. But I thought Koho just did a better job on the offense. Very cute puppy. Holy shit.
What?
Brian, your vote.
On puppies?
Are you going to change your vote based on the dogs now? All right. Yeah, so I was a little worried early on because there's some early references to the second Goon movie, and I know this being a hockey player in a movie, we had to ignore anything from the other movie, but luckily it was nothing more than just references that a second movie exists. So that turned out to not be a factor. I did still end up voting for Brandon though. I felt like I think Caleb did a good job of describing, of making his character as like the definitive hockey coach, and that is obviously a good thing to be a good character in a movie. But I think that just by the fact that Brandon's was a fictional character and also in a comedy, I think that just kind of gave his character more freedom, and he's able to do a lot more of the things like Brandon said, like, he can have the comedic moments for also the serious moments. You can create this arc for him, whereas, in Miracle, you're kind of dealing with the true story of it. And so I think that Brandon made the better argument for me, but I think a lot of it is just because of the fictional versus nonfiction. I think that Caleb's hands were a little tied on that one.
All right, Cody, you're deciding it.
Reason why I was laughing because you said on the whole, and it just made me think of Austin Powers. Preparation H does feel good on the whole. Went on a tangent. Sorry. I went with Koho. The reason why I went with Koho because I didn't think enough takedown is he's the ideal coach. I don't think there was enough, like, he is a speech, but I need a little bit more because Koho gave me more of why he is, and if there was counterpoints for that, I think there was more. I think it was closer than that, but again, it was just not enough takedowns for Kurt Russell's character versus he gave me a lot for Goon, but I just don't think there was enough hits to take down. So that's why I went with Koho.
All right, Koho wins point number 1. We are going to move on to the next question. It is in the category of DC. The question is, what is the best performance in a Superman movie that's not someone who plays Superman? Koho, you get to kick this one off. You have 1 minute when you start talking.
So I think there's a lot of interesting directions to go in Superman with characters for this question, but I think the one that worked best for me was Ben Affleck's version of Batman in BVS. I think ultimately that this performance of this character is the best in a movie that Superman is in because it's so interesting. And we get a lot of time with this character to learn a lot about Ben Affleck's take on Bruce, how Bruce is so much more beaten and weathered and scarred from just the opening with Superman taking out Metropolis to knowing that he lost to Robin, to seeing all the people that he doesn't have a relationship much with anymore, to the way he acts as Batman how much more violent he is, how much more unhinged he is, and how distrustful he is in the cowl versus even when he's out of the cowl and you see him as Bruce, you still get to see the classic Bruce Wayne type come through, but it's even different than what we've seen with other Bruce Waynes, where it's a little bit more. He's a little like he's charming enough to get in the door, and then he's also just a little off-putting that you don't want to hang around with him too much. I think Ben Affleck rides such a thin line as Bruce and such a striking line as Batman that he's the best in a movie that Superman is in.
Time. All right, we're gonna move over to Brandon. Brandon, you have 1 minute when you start talking.
When you think of good performances in superhero movies, specifically villains in Superman movies, you think of Lex Luthor. And when you think of Lex Luthor, you don't think of Jesse Eisenberg, you think of Gene Hackman. And I think his performance in the Christopher Reeve Superman movies is just one word, is iconic. He plays this rich, narcissistic, egotistical billionaire who is clearly unhinged, and you cannot look away every single time he's on screen. Gene Hackman is Lex Luthor. He shows moments of pure evil. He shows moments of comedy. He can lighten things up with his wigs and everything. And the fact that they kept bringing him back in multiple Superman movies shows the longevity of the character, shows, I don't know, I'm not supposed to bring up sequels again, but he just does such a good job of being that heel that Superman can play off of. And he's just iconic.
Time. All right. Gene Hackman versus Ben Affleck. 5 minutes when one of you starts talking.
So I think the biggest issue with you picking a Lex Luthor is you picked the wrong one. I think Lex Luthor as a villain is much more interesting when he represents the worst in humanity and is not a Bond villain. So you should have picked Spacey. But I think Hackman, in even just the first Superman, is one of the more disinteresting parts to that movie. He's just a Bond villain cartoon. There's no depth to this. There's no layers to Gene Hackman's performance. He is on one level, and I know not in all of the movies he's in. I don't think any of the sequels are like a betterment to your point, unless you want to admit he's like awful in Quest for Peace. But he's not an interesting character in any of the Superman movies, and it's not an interesting performance. He's just the same, whereas Affleck gives layers and depth to a role that we've seen done many times to make his own stamp on it and give us a new take on a character like that.
So my biggest issue with Batfleck is that for me, his performance it's kind of become a meme a little bit because one, that movie's super boring. I know we're not talking about the movie, but that movie's super boring. And for me, that just drags down the performance. You have the fight. You have that one fight scene, and that's like the shining moment. But then it all comes down to Martha. And that moment has become such a meme in popular culture that it kind of diminishes the rest of the character. I mean, I never really saw him as an equal to Henry Cavill. They tried their hardest, but it just didn't work for me. I didn't see him as someone who could actually beat Superman. We all knew what was going to happen. It was just so predictable that we all knew that, he got killed, not even by him. He didn't defeat him. He came back. We all knew this was going to happen. And it just didn't do anything for me. And for Gene Hackman, we're talking about performance here. We're only talking about the first movie because we made that mistake last time, or almost did. And he's so against type for Gene Hackman. You know of him as this great dramatic actor who has these great roles, and like in Hoosiers, another sports movie, and he plays this goofy character who's also super sinister, can be is narcissistic, just a complete psychopath, and he's just intriguing and compelling to watch.
You're right. It's against type for Gene Hackman because in other movies he's good. He's like a great dramatic actor, and in this he's definitely cashing in as a boring cartoon. And I don't think he adds anything to that movie whatsoever. I think that his henchman's more interesting than him. I think Ned Beatty's doing a better performance as his henchman than him. I think that the more interesting elements to Superman in that first movie come from everything but Lex Luthor. It's just sort of, he's an afterthought to that movie where he kind of really only shows up 3/4 of the way through and takes up 45 minutes and is just kind of a plot device. Whereas you're entirely wrong. Batfleck does beat Superman. He literally beats Superman. And then the Martha moment, you can call it a meme, it's bad writing, but I think Affleck's performance in the Martha scene is still compelling. Even in the form of the performance, the way he yells about his mom makes you actually take a brief pause and you're like, whoa. That's a lot of emotion out of this guy that I haven't seen him crack like this in front of anyone. Like, I think throughout the movie, you can not like the movie, but I think the shining example of why there's at least something interesting to watch is whenever Batman's on screen, he's the best part. Whenever Ben Affleck's on screen, he's worth watching because he's adding different layers with his when his performance off of Jeremy Irons with Alfred, where he's like, if there's even a 1% chance that he is could be evil, we have to take it as an absolute truth. The way that at the party he plays up as Bruce Wayne, how he plays off of Wonder Woman, I think that he interacts with everyone differently and adds such a nuance as a broken Batman, not just like a physically broken Batman, but as an emotionally and mentally exhausted, beaten man who is so filled with anger. And he comes through as someone who still has a little bit of hope in him. It's just he doesn't believe that Superman's good, and he does beat Superman. So, I mean, your issues with the writing in the movie, but Affleck's the best part of this movie.
He's the best part of the movie, but being the best part of the worst of a bad movie doesn't really say that much. I think everything you're saying is what they wanted you to take away from the movie. They wanted you to take this movie, but me just watching his performance, I just didn't get that from him. I don't think, he didn't portray like they wanted this dark, gritty Batman who's dealt with loss and dealt with everything. But I just kind of like many people just kind of saw Ben Affleck with a mask on. There was some really cool Batman moments in it, but for me, just all of the emotion that that's what they wanted you to take from the movie. I just never really took that away from it.
See, but I think Ben Affleck conveys more with his eyes than Hackman does in anything in his performance. Like, I think Hackman just showed up and thought he was in in The Spy Who Loved Me. Like, I just feel like, here's the thing. You say Batfleck is the best part of my movie, but I'd rather be the best part of a bad movie than the worst part of a good one. Because Gene Hackman's the worst thing in Superman 78, just full stop, because he adds nothing. He is not interesting. And all he does is he adds like a mustache twirling thing to this movie that before this is this really like interesting character study of a guy and why he's a hero.
All right. Brandon, you get to close first on this one. You have 1 minute when you start talking.
So Superman is this iconic franchise character, and he's nothing without a villain. And when you think of villains, you think of, like I said before, Lex Luthor. And Gene Hackman for me is just the perfect Lex Luthor. Yes, he can be a clown sometimes. Yes, he can be evil sometimes. He's a psychopath. He's all over the place, but that's what makes him so interesting and so exciting to watch. It's so sometimes being a Bond villain isn't a bad thing. I think looking at Superman or other comic book character villains, they try to be super serious sometimes. They try to be too goofy sometimes. And I think Gene Hackman just does the perfect job of towing that line of being super over the top goofy, but also super serious and a good heel to Superman's character. And that's why I think he is the best performance, because Ben Affleck's, honestly a little forgettable. His performance itself is overshadowed by the Martha moment and just that cool fight scene that he has halfway through the movie. But other than that, nothing really stands out to me.
All right, so we're going to bring in Koho. Koho, you have 1 minute when you start talking.
Lex Luthor is supposed to represent the worst in humanity is the exact opposite of Superman, who represents the best without being a human. Lex Luthor is supposed to be cunning, intelligent, able to manipulate the public, but Superman sees through that and put up a facade. And that's not what Gene Hackman does. That's what Kevin Spacey does. Gene Hackman instead comes in with a one-note version of a Bond villain performance. You say a Bond villain's not bad. It's bad when it's not in a Bond movie. Because in Superman, he's playing Gene Hackman did not read the script of who this character is and comes in and plays someone that he's not supposed to be. He's not interesting. He's not funny. He's not even better than other, like his henchmen in this movie. He's not better than Terrence Stamp, who is in the first 10 minutes and gone. At the end of the day, Gene Hackman fits more into Batman and Robin than he does Superman. Whereas Batfleck here actually elevates a movie that is not good. He makes an interesting character out of something that I've seen a million times. And you can say the Martha moment overshadows him. I think Affleck's performance is what we're talking about. And in Affleck's performance, he delivers something I've never seen. Pain in Batman's eyes. Real pain. Real anguish in every scene, in his emotions, in his decisions. And his eyes say more than Hackman does in his entire performance.
All right. We're going to bring in the judges.
I'm here. Just keep it to take up the camera.
I love every time Cody judges my debates because Superman's been here like almost every time, and it gives him anguish.
I'll explain.
Okay. Cody, you're kicking this one off.
Okay. So there's a lot of issues I had with a lot of the debate overall. Like, I think Brandon finally saved it for me when he said that a Bond villain isn't a bad thing. If you think of a lot of superhero, it is. Again, Koho knows me well enough. I don't buy the bullshit of you can get more in his eyes than Hackman's doing in the entire movie. I just don't buy that stuff. Like, that's stuff that you're just selling. I think the Martha moment, regardless what you see, is a huge hit on Affleck, and I think Brandon did attack it. And I think the best thing is you described it in a certain way, but his counterpoint is that's what they wanted to come across, but it never came across for a lot of people. And I think Brandon got it for me on that. I just think overall he was able to sell me on Hackman being goofy, being silly. And yes, I guess if Kevin Spacey is the best choice, maybe Kevin Spacey should have been picked over Ben Affleck. But that's my opinion.
I'll go next. I went with Brandon. I thought that this is tough. I don't love. I like 78 Superman quite a bit, but I don't. I feel the same about both of these movies. So it was even playing field from that regard. And I just thought that I kind of agree with Cody. I think that Koho did a really good job of like trying to paint the picture of like Ben Affleck is doing a lot more than maybe is like on the surface, but I think Brandon kind of just nailed the head of like, you might say that the Martha moment is like it goes beyond that, but at the end of the day, that's what it boils down to, is a moment like that isn't believable and he's not good in, and Hackman is kind of fitting the movie that he's in. And being a Bond villain isn't a bad thing, especially at the time that the movie came out. So this one was close. This one really genuinely was close. But I thought Brandon's closing was a lot stronger than Koho's. So I went with Brandon. So Brian, your vote doesn't count. Where would you have gone and why?
Well, I think Koho did not do a good job of convincing me. Like all of his knocks against Hackman and Superman 78, saying how he was like the worst thing about the movie, how Beatty was doing better, things like that. He did not convince me of any of those things at all. However, he did still get my vote because I thought he did a much better job for me of explaining why it was a better performance. Because even though he didn't, knock Hackman really enough, I think that he did a far better job of supporting his pick, especially was talking about how, Affleck comes into this character that has like this history behind him and he shows like this pain. I think he described him as a broken and beaten man. And just, he was able to really express that history of the character and the weight that's on his shoulders. And then he just painted a really good picture of that performance for him.
All right. Is it Brandon versus Caleb or Cody and Tim versus Brian? We will find out after the next question, but we're going to move on to question number 3. This was drafted by Brandon. It was in the category of Disney. Was it? Or was it? Yeah, it was Disney.
I think 1990. Yeah, it is.
1990s Disney. Whoops. What song from a 90s Disney film has aged the worst? Brandon, you get to kick this one off. You have 1 minute to open your argument when you start talking.
So there's a lot of, Disney things that haven't aged very well. A lot of things. But one that stood out to me was the song Gaston. And I was listening to it and just some of the lyrics, like no one says no to Gaston. It just doesn't seem like and then all the, people around him, the townsmen are singing the same song, like, oh yeah, you're so tough and macho. And this doesn't seem like the type of message we want to tell our young boys or girls, that being super macho and work out. It doesn't matter if women say no to you, you just take them anyways. And the whole town will like you. If you just spread these rumors about yourself and just act super cool. And I think just in this day and age with everything we're seeing, with the new feminist movement and things like that, it's just spreads toxic masculinity. And this song was responsible for that horrible epidemic that we're dealing with today. And there's just really no place for it. Just having people be like, oh, I'm big and tough and macho, I'm going to grab all the girls and make them mine. It's just kind of weird and gross.
strike it from the record.
No.
We're gonna bring in Koho. Koho, you have 1 minute to open your argument when you start talking.
I think there's a big difference between a song that supports a terrible character and being like, hey, look how terrible he is by making fun of him, by being this is what a macho person is, and that's not cool. But we'll get to that in the main rounds. The one I'm going to talk about is a song that actively is super, super harmful. It's a song that lyrically feels mean-spirited. Even if it makes sense within the plot of its movie, it feels too mean to both sides, where it's both people, all the people represented, the natives in the song look like aggressive, mean-spirited people and look the way the song wants them to make you look, which is not what the rest of the movie represents or shows. Whereas it also shows all the settlers and not a single one of them look good out of it either. So like I don't know what the point of this song ends up having to the movie because there's no necessarily need for savages in it. Instead, savages for Pocahontas just comes off as someone really, really, really liked one refrain and didn't think about what it was saying, and it's me.
Time. Okay. I'm going to give a fair warning. This sounds like it's going to be a politically charged debate. Let's keep it as family friendly as possible. As hard as that might be, it's a fair choices on both sides, but remember, we're not a political show. So keep it easy, but also do what you need to do to win your debate. Fair enough. So 5-minute freeform when one of you starts talking.
Okay, so I want to jump in right away because you started by saying Gaston is like supporting toxic masculinity. I think that is entirely the wrong read of Gaston. What I think the song Gaston serves in the context of the movie is showing all the people in this town. It supports what is the point of Belle earlier, which shows this small-minded provincial town of people are obsessed with the stereotypical Disney prince guy. But he's gross, and he's scary, and he's not a good guy. He's really, in the sentence of Beauty and the Beast. And that's really, I think, what that song is underpinning, what Alan Menken and Howard Ashburn are going for, is to show you, like, they're hyping up this guy. But all of them are mustachio-twirling bad guys singing about, like, look how great this guy is. And the song is making fun of Gaston more than actually saying, look how great he is. Where, again, I feel like Savages doesn't serve a purpose to its story, which has so many great songs and really good moments in Pocahontas. This just comes off as a weird, sidetracked, ugly moment for everyone involved.
But so you kind of made my point earlier. You said it's mean and it paints the settlers in a bad light. And I think that's kind of the whole point of the song. Like it's supposed to be. It's about these people being. I'm against racism, by the way. I just want to throw that out there. Okay. It's about these people. Caleb, you too? Okay, good. Yeah. Two white men talking about misogyny and racism. Yeah. Cool. But anyways, it's offensive. It was offensive back then. It's offensive now. And I think that's why they wrote it. Disney movies were kind of darker back then, and they wanted to portray these settlers as a bad guy. Would you listen to it just as like a song? No, probably not. But musicals and songs in musicals need to have context. And I think this did actually a pretty good job of showing that the settlers were bad people. And you can listen to the later songs. Pocahontas says, am I just in Colors of the Wind? She goes, am I just a savage? So like you can see that these people who actually still exist today are having an effect on her. But meanwhile, in the song Gaston, they're just pumping up this dude and being like, oh, you're so great. You're so grand. And he believes it. And kids who watch it, they know, they are like, oh, they're on Pocahontas' side. They know like, these aren't just savages. They're real people. I would show this to my students and they would see the racism and they'd be like people didn't actually say that type of stuff, but they did. And I think that's a good thing that Disney did is throw something like that into the movie, something that's real that you can actually be like, that's terrible, but that's the point.
See, but I think there's a difference in the execution. I don't necessarily think what you're saying about the function of what that song could be is necessarily wrong. I think about the content of it is mean-spirited. I think that there's a way to still, if you need that song to do it without getting as nasty as some of the lyrics get. Whereas I think that there's a way to still show the settlers as bad because they do earlier with like the song where they get there and the gold and the settler, like that shows them that they're bad. I don't need another one to show me that they're bad. I know they're the bad guys. And like, I already have understood that from the beginning. So I feel like this song serves no purpose. My real issue is not necessarily with the settlers looking bad. It's that the Native Americans in it have the same rage as the settlers and also show the same sort of like non-understanding. And it feels a little tone deaf. It feels like these characters suddenly become bad guys in this song out of nowhere. And that's what I don't like. I feel like Savages is a little too mean and doesn't thematically fit some of the characters and the ideas they're going with. Whereas again, with Gaston is a parody of what the Disney prince is. And the song adds to that. It builds off of Belle, where like they're like, I need 6 eggs, that's too expensive. And then in Gaston, it's when I was allowed to eat 4 dozen eggs. And it's like, okay, so this guy clearly doesn't care about anyone else around him. And they're obsessed with him, even though he's a bad guy. And they're all bad people. The song is all about bad people.
Yeah. Okay. So I think you make some pretty good points. But the thing about what the question is aging the worst. And I think Savages, we've talked about it could be mean. It is, offensive. It is racist, but that I say that's the point. And it's just been, problematic back then. No one really had a problem with Gaston now, but now we're seeing in this culture with toxic masculinity that like, it's not really a parody. Like that, people actually like that really exists. So like, it just doesn't look good going back and watching it. You're kind of like, it's kind of listening to it. It's kind of like, yeah, racism was gross back then, but it's like listening to it now with this macho Disney prince. It's like, no, it is kind of gross. And it not only harms that movie, but it kind of harms the Disney prince stereotype in general. Like listening to all the other Disney princes now, you're like, oh, it's kind of weird and gross.
I think that's the point. It wants to hurt the Disney prince stereotype, but I'll get to the rest of my thing in my closing about it. But like, I think you're wrong.
Sorry.
I think you're wrong.
I think you're wrong. So.
Whoa. Okay. Koho, you get to close first. You have 1 minute when you start talking.
I think in the terms of aging worse, I think Gaston's actually aged super well, because if Gaston's not in that movie, I feel like that every point you make about Gaston would be valid about that movie if the song Gaston didn't exist. I think the song Gaston works with the context of the rest of the movie and even on its own, as every line they say about Gaston is not something that anyone would feasibly say about a human being as a positive. Everyone in the song is a crazy person. And that's what the song does. The song makes fun of toxic masculinity for the entire run, to the point where I think even today, when you look at it, it's like, show that to people who have toxic masculinity. It knocks them down a peg. And you're always going to have people who don't understand the point of messages. But I think Gaston's message is inherently positive and progressive. Whereas Savages, I think, completely has no point within its story, within its movie, and in its wording. I think it comes off too harsh and too pointless, where you can do it, that message, and make it not racist. Like, you can make it easier.
Time. Okay. We're going to move over to Brandon, who has 1 minute to close when he starts talking.
So I think my thing is, like, unfortunately, racism does exist. It existed back then. It exists now. And I think Disney, they needed a way to introduce or have these villains be horrible. Pocahontas, and it gets to Pocahontas. She's like, am I just a savage? Am I just brown? Like she has in her other songs, she sings out past through this song. It's not a song you're going to play, but I think it does a good job of like making these hateful characters because, they did these terrible things. I think they did a good job. Like, it's not racist in like the Aristocats where they had an Asian character with I'm trying to be careful here, but, saying certain things, it was racist in a way that's real. People actually talk like that, and people still do. I think with Gaston, they made this character, everyone's like, no one, you can't say no to Gaston, and just this toxic masculinity character that everyone in the town loved. And like watching it now, it's just kind of gross and slimy and just doesn't work for me.
I would like to thank the players. That was really well done, actually, I thought. Cody disagrees with me.
No, it was good. I just felt like on a roller coaster, like holding on to my seat for the entire
I'm just saying that if Rosario had been in this debate.
Yes. Also, imagine how we felt trying to make the points.
It was tough.
Yeah.
Okay, I actually need to think about this, so hang on.
Maybe I didn't think long enough. Shit.
Well, I have my gut reaction, and I'm just going through everything.
oh, like going through the drive-through and like that's gonna hurt my stomach later. But Preparation H does feel good on the whole. Such a great movie. I'm glad you didn't. That next question, I'm glad you didn't pick Air because I haven't seen it.
I still haven't. So I'm glad you did. Actually, I was fine with it.
Okay, I'm going last, I think, right? Thank God. Brian, you're starting.
All right. So this is one when I just seen the picks and seeing both their introductions, I was a little worried because like both of them, I think both with Gaston and Savages, I don't think either of them offhand would age badly just because you aren't meant to agree with their point of view or what they're saying. They're the viewpoints of basically essentially the villains. And so it's like, no, you don't think that Gaston is a good thing to be toxic, and you don't think in the way he treats women, and you don't think they should look at people as savages. But that did get addressed in the argument. I like that. I know, especially Caleb, I know brought that up a lot. So I did end up going for Caleb. I just think that he did a better job of kind of attacking Gaston kind of for those same reasons. We're saying like, it didn't age badly because it's not glorifying this. The song was never saying this is a good way to treat women. It's never, trying to portray that as a good thing. Whereas in his, he was able to defend it some, saying that even in the song, it made everybody look bad. It made even the natives, it made them look like, these angry people, and everybody instantly hated each other and savages. So went for Caleb.
Cody.
So when you're picking the debate, sometimes it looks like you have the wide open 3-pointer and you're just able to take the shot, but you don't notice somebody coming from the side about to smack the shit out of that ball. That was Brandon for me. I think overall, Savages on paper is the slam dunk, like home run, because of the culture, like as it is now, what it looks. But Brandon's description of this is realism that Disney put into their movies. It's not great, and it's not a great side of history, but it didn't have anywhere to age because it's the history of how these people interacted. While Gaston, I think, is a bad choice personally, I still think the way he was able to spin zone it, where it could look terrible for some people, because some things that I see looking completely fine, some people have a huge problem with. So I think how he spun zone it made a lot of sense because, you can go back and see how he said it. That's how they treated each other back then. So that's why Brandon won. But I so thought it was 90-10 the other way before the question even started reading.
I hate this. I hate being the deciding vote. I like being able to look at the other people and going, you get to decide this one. They go, great. I feel like I looked at this a little differently than when Brian was talking, like saying, I feel like I looked at it a little differently in the sense that I thought that both players did equally well, in the sense that I thought Brandon was able to convince me, because I agree with Cody going into it. I was like, Savages is gonna win. That's the game, like just based off the titles. Like I feel like that's the winner. Brandon was able to convince me why Savages in the context of the movie is actually like not bad. And Koho was able to explain to me very well why Gaston in the context of the movie is not bad. So they equaled each other out there. And then it kind of came down to, well, who was able to kind of explain why theirs was just a hair more incorrect, I guess, at the end of the day, or hasn't aged well at the end of the day. And I've said it twice. I'm sorry. It is so close. Like, you saw how long I was thinking about it. I went with Koho. I thought, and I really didn't expect it going into it, but because I think Gaston's like one of my favorite Disney songs. Like, I love that song. And Brandon did do it. I pointed out things that I never thought about before in that song. but I think Koho was just more easily able to tell me why his song, just on the slightest edge, doesn't work versus Gaston does work for the character. It was so hard to pick this one for me, and I didn't expect that. Like I said, I literally thought going into this, it was like Cody said, 90-10 one way, and Brandon made it so close in a way that I didn't expect. It literally 49-51 to the point where I don't even fucking know, man. Like, but Koho gets the vote. I wrote his name. I wrote Koho of the Kalebs on my board. So, fuck. We're going on to the final prep question. It's in the category of director, I believe. Is that correct, Koho? Great. The question is, what is the best performance in a Ben Affleck directed film? So, Koho, you get to kick this one off. You have 1 minute when you start talking.
I just want to say Ben Affleck's a great director, and you all should give him a little credit because what he's able to do with actors is great. And I think the best work he's ever done by bringing a performance out and getting the best performance out of any of his movies is in the movie The Town, where Jeremy Renner comes in and hits the home run of his career. I think Jeremy Renner in The Town is giving a performance that is so terrifying. As someone that I think you could believe would be your best friend, who would absolutely stand by you through thick and thin, but would also, if you crossed him, shoot you in the head. I think Jeremy Renner comes off as unhinged, untrustworthy, but very, very, very emotional and loyal to the people he grew up with. And then when you get into the minutia of the heist and can he trust Ben Affleck anymore and those emotions, I think it brings out an even bigger layer to Renner where he's like, I won't hurt you, but I don't know if I can trust you. And it's still where you just don't trust the wild card that Renner is in The Town. An incredible turn from him. He got the Oscar nomination for a reason. Great work from Renner.
Just had to bring up the Oscars. Okay, let's go over to Brandon. 1 minute when you start talking.
Okay, so most kidnapping movies, you're moved by the parent, the mother, the father of the child. That's like the character that really grounds you and want you to bring this child home safe and sound. Can't wait for the child to be reunited with the parent. But here, that's not the case in Gone Baby Gone. You're unsure about that because she's like the least likable mother in the history of cinema. And that's all thanks to the amazing performance done by Amy Ryan, who's playing completely out of type here, as I knew her from The Office before I saw this movie. She's completely different. And she has, this despicable character, does a great job with the accent, really believable addict who, just you believe she'll put anybody, the money, drugs, just her own happiness ahead of her daughter. And that's what makes it so, compelling. She's the only nomination or the Academy Awards from this movie. Even with a short amount of screen time, I think it's just a testament to her performance.
Time. Also mentioning the Oscars. Interesting. 5-minute freeform when one of you starts talking.
It's the best for the reason.
So here's the issue with Amy Ryan. It's a very we're in one lane performance. She comes in the first scene and she's that person the entire time. Is it like a very somewhat entertaining drug addict performance? Sure, but it's not different than any. I saw Andrea Riseborough do the same thing better in To Leslie last year. I feel like other people have taken this ball and run with it better than Amy Ryan does. So she's not giving me anything unique or special, especially within the scope of Ben Affleck's directed work. There's a better version of this in The Town with Blake Lively. I feel like there are better versions of this character that come across in other Ben Affleck films, whereas Jeremy Renner stands head and shoulders above everyone else Affleck's ever directed as giving me such a layered and intense performance that no one else in an Affleck movie has been able to replicate on their own.
So I disagree because, going into this movie, Gone Baby Gone, I didn't really know what it was about. I knew it was about a kidnapping, right? So the entire time I was watching this movie, I was expecting the mother to be a likable character, empathetic character, because that's what you always get. And in the beginning of the movie, you think that a little bit, and then the next time, every time you see her, you don't know what she's thinking. You think that, sometimes, when she's on camera in the beginning of the movie, you're like, oh, she actually misses her daughter. Then halfway through, you're like, maybe she doesn't. And then when she finds out she's dead, you're like, oh, maybe she does. And the reason for that and that performance is kind of what makes the ending worthwhile. If you know, if spoilers if you haven't seen it, they find out who kidnapped the kid, and they're thinking about, let's just leave her with them because she's such a terrible mother. And I think if Amy Ryan doesn't give that performance, the movie doesn't work. If she doesn't give that performance of, you know, unhinged drug addict who maybe, and then afterwards when she's finally reunited, you're seeing her like, oh, maybe they made the wrong decision. She's just playing both sides. Does she even like the daughter? Does she love the daughter? You don't know. Does she love herself? For me, and she stands out on the screen. For Jeremy Renner, I think he's great in this movie, but he also has an amazing cast to work with. Amy Ryan's kind of working alone in this movie for most of it. She's talking to herself for most of this movie, and she stands out above, you know, Ed Harris and Morgan Freeman, and just, you know, is this movie for me.
So I hard disagree with that. I think Ed Harris is dunking on her in this movie, as is Morgan Freeman. And I think that Gone Baby Gone has arguably as good a cast as The Town. I think that the issue is, I know what Amy Ryan's thinking from the beginning. I just don't believe your statement whatsoever. She's a terrible mom from scene one, and she's a terrible mom at the end, and there's no point throughout this where I think that she ever cares about the kid. The only times that we are supposed to is when like news people try to project it, and even in the news interviews, she still comes off as the exact same Amy Ryan character. Amy Ryan does the same thing in all 5 of her scenes. It's the same, like, I'm cursing and I'm angry and I don't trust you. And she's playing off of Michelle Monaghan and Casey Affleck, who are great actors. And like everyone in this movie is making Gone Baby Gone the suspense that it is. Amy Ryan is not working alone. She's not even working for herself. She's not as interesting as you paint her out to be whatsoever. The script is doing all the heavy lifting. Where it comes down to The Town, yeah, it's a great cast. And within that great cast, Jeremy Renner stands above the best, which I think is more impressive. Jeremy Renner is the reason to watch The Town, because when you get to the heist at the end, he's the wild card that could blow it all up. He's the reason where Affleck doesn't know if he's going to live at the end. And when at the end of the movie, you see Affleck watch Renner confront Ham, you're terrified because you have no idea what's going to happen in this interaction, how it's going to hurt Affleck. Affleck's so close to getting out, and he has Rebecca Hall to worry about, who Jeremy Renner, when he meets Rebecca Hall, is close to realizing the relationship there. And then you're scared for Rebecca Hall's life because you don't understand, like, Jeremy Renner comes off as the world's best friend to Ben Affleck, but then you know how terrifying and unhinged this guy can be. He's so violent that you're like, Affleck is walking in direct opposition to Renner, and he can't let Renner know because Renner will kill people. And I think that's what's entertaining and interesting, is that he defines The Town with his performance. Amy Ryan does not define Gone Baby Gone. Gone Baby Gone is defined by twists, great screenwriting, and great directing. Amy Ryan's just a frosted flake, kind of like sprinkle on top of the story. Like, she's fine.
I think she's the whole reason for why the decision is difficult in the first place. If you don't have, if you don't have this mother character that is even compelling, but just a forgetful mother, you're like, whatever, just forgetful. But she has these moments. She's not one dimension. She has these moments. And again, she stands out. I feel like she stands out on her own. She's working with Michelle Monaghan. She's working with Casey Affleck. They're fine in this movie. They're just kind of like just being Boston. I think Jeremy Renner has a lot more to lean on in his performance. He has Ben Affleck. He has John Hamm. He has Blake Lively. He has all these characters that he can kind of push up. And I think, Amy Ryan just stands out on her own.
All right. Brandon, you get to close first. You have 1 minute when you start talking.
So we're going with just performance here. And for me, the performance-wise is a performance can make or break a movie. Jeremy Renner is good in The Town. I'm not, maybe the best part of the movie, sure. But for me, why Gone Baby Gone works is solely because of Amy Ryan's performance. You take her out, it doesn't work. At the end of the movie, you actually, like, going into a kidnapping movie, you want to be like, reunite the mother or the kid with the mother. This mother is horrible. So when you get to the end of the movie, you're like, wait, maybe you don't reunite the kid with the mother. Right? It's something you never would even think about before, but that's because of the amazing performance by Amy Ryan, who is doing something that I haven't seen her do before. I've seen her play mothers. I've seen her play comedy. I've never seen her do anything like this before. A drug-riddled, has strong accent, and her choices that she makes is entirely why you want to leave them with Morgan Freeman, and that's something you never would have thought going into this movie.
Spoilers. No, I'm just kidding. We'll go over to Koho. 1 minute when you start talking.
again, that's not at all on Amy Ryan, because Amy Ryan, if we're focusing on just the performance, is serviceable. This film is built on the twists, the mystery, the intrigue, and when you get to the end and you find out it's who it is, and the entire debate comes down to just because of how good that person is in the movie. The person that they could leave him with is a good person earlier. And like, that's not because Amy Ryan's so good at being a bad person or that X is so good at being a good person. That's the dilemma that Ben Affleck as a director has created. Amy Ryan is fine. She's serviceable. She does the same thing. She's a drug-addled mom, and she does the same thing in all 5 scenes where she's like, I'm coked out, and I think my daughter is missing, and you need to bring her back to me. And like, it's the same scene. She does the same scene 5 times. And it has nothing to do with her performance, why you feel that way. It has everything to do with the story and the way Ben Affleck crafts that story and everyone else around her who is better. Jeremy Renner is the town. Again, you didn't knock anything I said about Renner. Renner is the best part that makes that the tense thriller that it is, that you're unsure about the ending.
Time. All right. We'll move over to Brandon. Or no, we already did Brandon. My God, I'm losing my mind. We'll bring in Brandon and Coho. Okay.
Can I hold what somebody said on another show they recorded against them?
No, but you can bring it up so that I can know what you're talking about.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, I get to go first. Great. So excited.
Hey,
you want to go first? You want to go last?
What do you want to do? Why are you on the show? What are we doing here?
I like going second, frankly.
Then make yourself go second. This is the Tim show anyways.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm going with Brandon. Thought this was good. I think it was a lot of arbitrary bullshit about like the character and less about the performance. Co-host like, oh, you don't know what's going to happen because the character did this in the movie. I'm like, tell me about the performance. But the character did this. And then Brandon was like, oh, my character, it did this. Okay, but what about the performance? That's how I felt about it. Frankly, I thought this was kind of the weakest of the 4, but maybe I'm just a fool bird. I went with Brandon because I think that Brandon was able to tell me Amy Ryan comes from comedy. She comes from other performances. You wouldn't expect this from her, and she turns in a performance where by the end of it, the way that she acts in the movie, you don't want the daughter to go back to her based on the performance and the character. Coho was able to just be like, Jeremy Renner is in the movie and his character. That's what I heard. Tell me if I'm crazy. Brian, we'll go to you.
Well, yes, you are.
Right.
I do also want to comment that when you showed your answer for Brandon, no one seemed more surprised than Brandon. Like, what?
Yeah.
I went the other way. I went Coho. So Cody's gonna get to decide this one. For me, I think that it was just a matter of I think Coho did a real good job attacking how Amy Ryan, as great as her performance is, it simply is kind of one lane, one scene, one kind of style to it. Whereas with Renner, he was able to give more varied performance because of the different kind of aspects of the character, the different kind of scenes, the different relationships that he has in the movie. And like he said in his closing, I think that Brandon didn't have as many attacks against Jeremy Renner as he did against Amy Ryan.
Okay, Cody, are we going to the speed round or are we done?
So Coho does a show with Boatman, and I watched it because I really liked the town, and I was curious. And Jeremy Renner was brought up, and he's like, he's good, but he's not my personal top 5 for the year. Like, he's fine, but Blake Lively's really good. So I'm surprised he didn't bring Blake Lively, which was compared to. I think the Amy Ryan Blake Lively comparison is a really strong point in this fight. For one, I don't remember Koho saying which car we taking, yours or mine, which would have, like, if I missed that, sorry, but that's a key point to the town. But I did go with Kaleb. Because I think overall, the the structure of battling against both of them, I think he just had more hits, and as he describes it, Jeremy Renner in that movie does set the tension pretty well throughout. So I had to go with Koho.
All right, well, that means your winner is Kaleb Koho. Moving on to round 2 of the tournament, we're going to start by talking to Brandon. Brandon, great job. A lot of split decisions today. I don't think we had a clean sweep across the board.
Nope.
So, and I'll look at the stats, but I don't think that's happened once this year, let alone this tournament. So, Brandon, how are you feeling about the match against Koho?
Feel all right. A little disappointed. I mean, I definitely agree with the decision. I don't think I performed the way I have in the past. I think Kaleb, had a counterpunch for everything I had to say. I just need to. I think next time get a little less cute with the answers. Picking some of the going against obvious choices. I think the Gaston choice. You guys picked the one I was trying to get to, but he immediately countered it with what I was trying to counter him with. So just kind of get back to the basics of just like not trying to overthink my picks, and just coming up with I was able to get what I wanted to say for the most part. I wasn't really frustrated in this match, which was good. Like I have in matches in the past.
You guys had a good back and forth.
Yeah. So he never really stumped me. He was more prepared, I think, and I need to just do better at just having more takedowns in the Jeremy Renner one. I was hoping that one wouldn't matter because it's hard to find. I think he is great in that movie, and it's hard to find a holes in that, and I couldn't find them, and that's what it came down to.
Yeah. Brandon, you did a great job today, and we love having you here. I'm looking forward to having you back later this season. Thank you for being here as we bring in the winner, Kaleb Koho, winning in round 1. Your last match you lost against Cody. Now you beat Brandon. You're moving on to round number 2. How are you feeling about the match and overall? Yeah.
I was expecting to have to hit the high gear, get aggressive, start throwing in points and the strategy I normally do with a lot of competitors by the second question. Normally my first question is I feel out what the energy is and what I need to bring. And Brandon is just so relaxed that I was just I don't think I need to be aggressive. I was I think I can just take a second and think and just have a discussion debate, which I haven't had against a lot of competitors I've had to play because most people are able to match my aggressive energy, and we have to make it a back and forth with Cody or where I had to be aggressive with Cody and Cody's aggressive with me, or if I play Boatman or Holtz, whatever. But Brandon was just really I think this was just probably one of my more favorite debates because I just felt I was talking to a cool dude about movies. So that was kind of nice. So I liked it. Brandon's got a really good conversational style of debate that I was not prepared for, and I had a great time playing against. But I think that he's going to be a threat next time he comes back. I think definitely I did okay. I did okay, but it was different for me.
Yeah, I mean, if you like having conversational debates, sorry, because in round number 2, you're going up against the number 1 seed, Bill Carriola.
Oh boy. I'm so excited. I actually am really excited to play Bill because I feel like Bill and I are very similar levels of chaos, and his chaos though is more a refined chaos, and mine is just loud bludgeoning anger. And to see these two go at it, to see our two kind of debate styles go is going to be interesting. I'm also just so prepared for him to finally get me to watch Hard Ticket to Hawaii so I can have to fight it for the first time. It's probably something I'm going to have to do. But I'm excited to play Bill, and I'll say this is probably this is the best I felt as a debater in a hot second, and maybe that's because less trivia, more watching and focusing on prep has made it more engaging for me again. Yeah. But I want to win this tournament, and I want to beat Cody so bad, to be honest with you. This is what I want. I'm in it to win it.
I love the moxie. Koho, we'll see you in round number 2. That just got me fucking hyped. Brian, let's get final thoughts from you.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a pretty close debate throughout. I mean, there's a lot of times when you see their picks in the chat, and you can kind of tell, then I mean, you're going to listen to the debate and decide your pick then, but you can kind of say, well, that person's got kind of an uphill battle with that pick. Some of them just seem like the more fitting choice. Like you were talking about with the Savages thing, but I thought actually all of them were very even picks, and I didn't know where this one was going to go. I think that Koho, played it very smart. He talked about how he wasn't prepared for Brandon's style, but the thing is, he recognized that and he adapted it. He said, "Okay, I'm going to take this kind of approach," and he was able to relax and kind of get into it. And I think that's very smart. I think it's part of debate is being able to adapt, so you can not be stuck in what you had prepared or the way you were going to present it, but instead to go with the flow of the debate. And that's good job.
Yeah, absolutely. Cody, final thoughts from you and apparently your future opponent, Kaleb Koho.
Well, I've already beat him, so I'm not really worried about that. But overall, Brandon, again, this is a closer fight because my 2 votes were for Brandon, so this would be going to the speed round if my vote only mattered. So I thought it was.
I tried to give him the first question. You guys voted.
I know I fucked that up. No, but it was a lot closer than I thought it would be. Like with picks and choices, and they ended up trading each other on the first questions, and so. That's the intense thing. And yeah, Koho, I hope you do win the tournament. Because hell, I'd rather play you than Jacoby again. I'll promise you that. So either way, I will be waiting for whoever, because I think this is my last judge. I cannot judge any past this point. So good luck to everybody else in the tournament, because I'll be waiting at the end.
That's true. All right. Well, thank you so much to Cody and Brian for judging this one. Thank you to Koho and Brandon. This has been Fanzone Debate. We'll see you guys real soon with round number 2. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.
There we go. Thank you very much. Please come again. We have a lot more groceries.